Welcome, everyone. Here we are. We have the sports writers with us, Phil Stacy, Matt Williams, Nick Kukuru, and we're here to talk some North Shore sports. Gentlemen, we have so much tournament action. I mean, this has been a crazy busy week here for tournament games all around the North Shore and obviously beyond statewide. But Phil, maybe we could just touch with we're recording this on Tuesday evening. And so we got a lot of results to talk about. But Moynihan Lumber had their Student Athlete of the Month of the Year awards
Yeah.
today as we speak on Tuesday. Maybe you guys just want to just touch on that. I had a chance. I said this earlier to a couple of people. I said, I've talked to all the winners, monthly winners, and these kids are so great, to chat with. But you know the two big winners, the athletes of the year, pretty well in
Yeah,
Jimmy Ayers and Maggie Sturgis.
I do. Yeah. It's in this business, as you know, Bill, you've been in it longer than I have. You tend to gravitate to the kids who perform well and in our business get the headlines. And Jimmy and Maggie certainly fit that bill, but they're not just terrific athletes, they're also outstanding scholars, both at or near the top of their respective senior classes, National Honor Society, both going to outstanding schools. Maggie, or McGuire is her given name, going to the College of Holy Cross to play field hockey, and Jimmy is going to Johns Hopkins University to continue his lacrosse career. And I think, and I said this today at the luncheon, I think what really makes these two winners special is they really embody what the award means to me, which is not only a great athlete, not only a great student, but really great people. And that may sound corny or like I'm overselling it, but I'm really not. I mean, having gotten to know them both very well the last 3 years, I can tell you they're unselfish. They are team first. The goals, in Maggie's case, she scores bunches and bunches of them. A nice, or Jimmy does in lacrosse, and he's more of a facilitator in hockey. But it's not about personal glory; it's about team glory. They just happen to have big roles in their team success, but they do take it all with a grain of salt. I know their parents, and again, both families are top notch. Heidi Holland, who is Maggie's mom, wonderful lady, and Kate and Andy Ayers are two of the nicest people you're going to meet. Jimmy's parents. So I always enjoy this day. The Moynihan family does a wonderful job, not only putting on the banquet at Salem Country Club each year, and they lay out the spread for 100+ people, give out all kinds of awards, with the student athletes being the two biggest. But what they've done over the last 31 years to recognize that this was a need in the area, to recognize two students, in much the same way our paper has given out a student athlete of the year award. They wanted to do it for male and female, and get the sports writers from the local papers involved in picking monthly and then a yearly winner of each, male and female. I think what they do and the money that they've put into it, and what was the line that Jack said today? And I'm paraphrasing here, but they don't have a horse in the race. It's not like they've had family go through Masconomet or St. John's Prep or whatever it may be, and they want to recognize kids from those schools. They truly are a North Shore institution when it comes to this, and want to recognize kids from all over. So I really want to thank Gerard, who couldn't be there today, and his brother Jack, who was, and nephew Chris, and the entire Moynihan family, who do just a fantastic job putting on an A+ event that is really one of the highlights of our calendar every year.
Early in June, you got it. Nick Kukuru and Matt. Nick, why don't you go?
Yeah, I mean, I always like, just seeing the crop of kids we get. I mean, I thought this year especially, me and Willie were looking over the monthly winners before it started, and it's like, man, this was kind of a stacked year for winners. There were a lot of good ones. It was not a clear-cut pick. That just, shows how good the two winners were to come out of a crop like that. You kind of had to, bring a little extra this year, and both of them, certainly did.
That John Hopkins lacrosse factory for
Yeah.
years there, and so there goes Jimmy Ayers there. That's fantastic. That's huge. To jump onto to go to such a high level too for college. Absolutely. All right. On we go to the tournament action. And Phil, why don't I circle back to you, or Matt? Do you want to touch Phil up? Update us on any tournament action during the day on Tuesday that you were following.
My screen's black here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yep.
we can hear you.
Okay, good, interesting. But well, Tuesday, I think probably maybe the arguably the most interesting score was probably Peabody softball 9-5 over Milford. They were scheduled to play Tuesday and then Wednesday. So they tried to be a little spotty with Abby Betancourt. Didn't start the game. They took a 3-0 lead. Ended up 3-3. In comes Abby to shut things down. They built a 9-3 lead. Out goes Abby. The other team hits a 2-run homer to make it 9-5. We're not messing around. Abby comes back. So, a little cautious, and they got the job done, with Avery Greco. So game a little bit closer probably than people would realize, but then people that didn't actually read Gene's wonderful game story that just look at the final score wouldn't realize that those runs didn't come against Abby. So interesting too to me that Peabody is playing back-to-back days, because I noticed that their opponent, should they advance, would be North Andover and Wachusett. They don't play their second round game until Friday. So not sure really what the rush is.
Right.
But hey, I don't make the MIAA schedule, and as we know, I'm never one to criticize them. So, that was sort of the most interesting score for me Tuesday.
I
I
feel like
think,
this year, sorry, I mean to interrupt. Well, is it weird that, we had barely any games last week? Every team got at least a week off. Some got more than a week off. And then you have some teams cramming in 3 games this week.
yeah, I don't know if that's a choice too. I mean, maybe Peabody would like to get the games in back to back. I mean, that could have been something they wanted to do, or maybe St. Paul, their next opponent is out in Worcester. Maybe they have some events that we're obviously not aware of. I mean, we know when the graduations are for the teams around here, the baccalaureates and the proms and this and that, and all these different things going on. The pineapple socials and things of that nature. Who knows? So there's always different events that cause these things to be moved around. But I think specifically Tuesday, that was probably the most interesting score. I think to touch on baseball real quick, you really got to shout out Marblehead. I mean, my goodness, they go out and they almost lose to Somerville in a preliminary round game, a slugfest. They pull out a 13-11 win. You think, wow, this team's probably in some trouble. They threw their ace, and he barely didn't even get out of the game against Somerville, who's a really low power ranking team. And then they go on the road with their number 2 and they beat the number 4 seed 8-4. So Marblehead, moving on to the round of 16 for a second consecutive year. They're a team that is tremendous swinging the bats up and down the order, and as a result of having been in a preliminary game last week, they get to go to that round of 16 with their ace, Ian Maud, ready to go. So, that's pretty exciting for them.
We got an interesting thing with Willie here. Willie, we see your face, we hear you fine. You sound great, but your face is it's like a still shot there. So I don't know what's
Maybe I have
going
a
on.
face for radio. I don't know.
Well, there it is. I guess what we can say is they took the best photo and we're sticking with. Oh, there we go. Now we got you live, I guess here.
Okay, all right. Well,
I'm seeing you blink. All right, so he's actually alive. It's not a stand-in. It's actually the real Matt Williams here
No,
with us. Yeah. All right.
sorry
Nick,
on my end. I forgot that it's bedtime for my 10-year-old. So
oh, I know.
had
It's a
to,
late one here too. We're on prime
can't
time here.
can't break up daddy-daughter tradition.
Nick, how about
Bedtime.
yourself from the Cape Ann League? Cape
Yeah,
Ann area, rather. Sorry.
yeah. I mean, the three tennis matches today. Manchester Essex boys moved on. They beat Monmoy 4-1 in an 8-9 matchup. They got Weston next, who is just a juggernaut. So that'll be a tough one for them. Rockport boys got bounced by Linfield. That was a tough matchup, a 3-19. But Rockport's kind of emerged in this system as kind of a dark horse team. They enter the tournament right around 500. Maybe a game or two below, but they're 3-2 in the tournament in the last 2 years. So that's kind of proving ground for them there. The Cape Ann League's tough, but they're a rock solid team. And then we had Gloucester boys. Their match got suspended today due to weather. They went all the way down to Lakeville to play a Pontiac. And that one was suspended. All 5 matches were in the first set. Gloucester was leading 4 of them, none comfortably though. They were all pretty close. within a point or two, and nobody had, set, point as of yet. So there's still a lot of tennis to be played when they got to make that 2+ hour drive again on Wednesday. And then if they win that, they're scheduled to make the drive to Medway to play Dover Sherborne right away on Thursday. So could be a pretty hefty schedule for them coming up. And then we have, in the area, just one softball team, Gloucester softball, still alive. They play on Wednesday at Norton. That's the 4-13 matchup. We'll see how that goes. Gloucester has really brought the bats. They got 15 runs last game against Medfield. Medfield got 12 of their own, though, but they got dealt with a pretty significant blow. One of their big pitchers, Cam Carroll, her and Ashley Aiello have been a pretty good 1-2 punch, a very good 1-2 punch, I should say. And they've kind of been an even split, but Carroll hurt her knee, so she's not going to be back for the playoffs. And that's a big blow for Gloucester. They use their two pitchers pretty wisely. Not having that backup to go to could be tough in the coming rounds. But if they keep swinging the bats the way they do, they could pull off an upset tomorrow at Norton. And then we got both Manchester Essex lacrosse teams are playing on Wednesday as well. Manchester Essex boys are at Linfield in a 7-10 match. Manchester won the regular season match 10-9, so that should be a really good one in the round of 16 there. And then the Manchester Essex girls host Toronto tomorrow night in the round of 16. So if they win, they get to take a ferry ride to Nantucket. So that's what's on the line tomorrow night there.
Should just ship right out from Manchester by the sea there.
Exactly.
Go direct. Come on, somebody's got to have a boat in that town they can borrow. Come on, Jeez.
Oh, I'm sure there's plenty.
Yeah. Might
if
be a
they
few.
bring the JV team, they're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Phil, why don't you pick us up? I was trying to come up with something. I got nothing.
Sometimes the segue is just not there, Billy.
Yeah, there's no segue here. Here's Phil.
Anchors away.
Anchors away. Well, you would have needed a pretty big boat like that one that picked up Tom Hanks in Castaway. What do you call one of those things? They're the one that the big freighter that drove by to get all
is he doing any better than I did? I'm not sure you are, Phil. No, I had nothing. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm going with it. I'm saying you need a big vessel to get all the boys on the St. John's lacrosse team into the game. All 53 players who were dressed got into today's game. 53 would be more than most varsity and JV programs around, but they had 53 players play today in a 14-3 first-round tournament game over.
The rule about that? That seems like a lot. I don't know. I know that was an issue. There's no rule about how many kids you're allowed to dress in a particular game.
We have the visual proof here. I don't know if you can see this, but
no, I believe you. I'm just curious.
Roster, they got all 53 in.
No, I believe he played all 53. I'm just curious if they, remember they got in trouble there for bringing too many football players and hockey players to their various events. It surprises me there's not some NFHS roster rule about how many kids you can have or whatever.
That's a good question. I honestly, like in hockey, you can dress whatever 23 kids, or maybe for the playoffs, maybe 24 or something. But I don't know if there's a limit in lacrosse. I don't think many teams face that conundrum.
I suppose they don't. Yeah, exactly. There's probably only two teams, just like the football. There's probably only two teams in the state that would take advantage.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Today there was absolutely no heavy lifting, as you would expect. The 1 versus the 32, and Barnstable, which defeated Peabody in a prelim game the night before. They're not a bad team. They just, playing St. John's is just not a fair fight. So, for St. John's, it was a chance to obviously get everybody in, but, some of their starters were out 4 minutes into the second quarter. A lot of the young guys, as they've done in years past in these early playoff games, get a chance to get their feet wet, work the ball around, see what they can do. I mean, at St. John's, and I know there are other programs in various sports that do that, but the junior varsity and the varsity practice together every day. They run all the same stuff. They lift together. They run all the same drills. So these guys are learning what the starters and the stars do and things like that. So it's a chance for them to showcase their wares a little bit. And 11 different guys scored. 4 different goalies played. They all made at least one save. So pretty cut and dry win for St. John's. They move on to play Wellesley, number 17 seed, on Thursday. Marblehead is the only other team alive. I'll get to them in a second because Ipswich went out to the far reaches of Western Mass and Wakana, which I believe is in Dalton, Mass, in the Berkshires, if I am correct, which many times I'm not, but I think I am in this one.
Yeah, it is.
It is. Okay.
You kind of got to go through Pittsfield to get there. You got to kind of go through Pittsfield and then go back east because it's kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like they're so far in between exits off the pike, right?
Yeah.
They're off.
No
They
kidding.
are off the pike, I think. Really, that's
So
where
you have
Jeff
to, like,
Burden was from.
circle back, huh? Geez, I didn't even know that. Well, I'm sure from Ipswich that was a tidy 3.5 hour bus ride out there. In any case, the Tigers, they had a great game today. Ultimately lost 11-10, and it sounds like there was a delay of about an hour because of thunderstorms out in Western Mass. But Ipswich, I might have mentioned on the podcast before, they did not play nearly as many games as most of our other teams locally. In fact, they only played 13 because I think Willie, if I'm not mistaken, didn't they essentially shut down athletics in Ipswich for a couple of weeks because so much of the student body was going to Europe as part of like a band, performance band, choral type deal, and so many kids were involved that they weren't really going to have enough to field teams. So
That's right. Yeah, it was. I think it was really a week. It was the April vacation week, I think. So maybe it was like 10 days, or maybe maybe it was like the back end of 1 week and ended up adding up to more than 7 days. But it was mostly the April vacation week that they were away. Yeah, they would have been really hard to field teams.
Yeah, I think Ipswich went like 13 days without playing a lacrosse game. So they only played 13 games. So I'm not sure that they really had a true glean of how they'd match up against good teams. I mean, they beat the teams they should have beat. They probably lost to the teams they should have lost to, given they are very young. They've had some key injuries to some of their upperclassmen, some of the few upperclassmen that they have. But they rolled in their tournament opener last week over Whittier, traveled out to Western Mass today, and really gave it everything they had in losing by 1 goal. So congratulations to Glenn Foster and his Tigers on another good season. Now we get to Marblehead, which had a battle in their opener with Boston Latin last week. I was at that game last Friday, and there were 2 different delays, weather-related delays, that added up to an hour and 58 minutes. In case some of our listeners don't know, and it really, I think, affects the spring. It wouldn't really, certainly wouldn't affect the winter sports, and we would almost never see it during the fall. But when there is thunder or lightning, really lightning, whether it's heat related or because there's oncoming rain, they got to shut down for 30 minutes. And every subsequent, flash across the sky, a crack or whatnot, they have to restart that 30-second clock. So that happened a couple times in Marblehead last Friday night. If you remember, it was probably about 70 degrees at 5 o'clock when the game started, and then the weather dipped and it got dark, and you could tell it was going to rain, and it started with the lightning first. So they ended that game in a pouring rainstorm, but Marblehead did hold off Boston Latin to win. They're 19-0, best season record-wise in school history. And, they'll play their second round game this Thursday, same date and time as St. John's Prep, actually. But they're going to be they'll be looking to advance to the quarterfinals. They are taking on Milton on Thursday at 5 p.m. So looking for John Wilkins and his team to keep it rolling and see what they can do. They're the only 2 boys lacrosse teams we have left in our readership area, which I think for us and our tournament teams, Bill, is down to 24 teams, Willie, I want to say.
In the neighborhood there, yeah, something like
All
that.
told, yeah, if you add in rugby and volleyball and tennis and whatnot. So, we're still in the thick of it. We're separating the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. But we've had some great games so far. Expect some more great ones coming up in the days and week plus ahead.
Bill, I'm concerned. Where will you be on Thursday at 5 p.m.? Marblehead or Danvers?
I'll tell you what, that is a bone of consternation because I would love to be in two places at once. Unfortunately, even with all this AI, I can't clone myself yet. But
That's good. That's not the worst thing.
no,
Trust me.
that's not
Yeah,
the
yeah,
worst thing.
yeah.
But 99% of the time I have 100% of the time I have a tremendously supportive wife who knows that I'm here, there, and everywhere, especially during tournament season. And it's usually last minute that we find out these things like, oh, I gotta go to, Athol tomorrow. Okay, that kind of thing. But she has a very rare night work event,
Mm.
won't be here. And my daughter, my 10-year-old, has to be picked up from her dance at 7. So I need to figure out which game I can go to and get out of quickly and obey all speed laws and get back to my home by 7 to pick her up. It's probably leaning St. John's right now because Marblehead is, got to go through Salem. That's a bit of a
Yeah.
tricky ride, but we will have to figure that out. But despite all the craziness, we'll make it happen. We'll get to the game and we'll pick up Miss T and on this end and go from there.
Well, I see there is a point to that story. I was wondering for a minute there, but that I get it now. Because I
It's
mean
the Irish
The
long-windedness.
people in Marblehead would be upset if you were not there. But I think they have to understand this. When you are in Marblehead, it takes 30 minutes to get anywhere.
To where I'm going, it's probably like 50
Oh,
minutes.
an hour. Yeah, there's no way.
Yeah, that's a little tricky.
Yeah. So
And
good.
I would love to be there. I think, while I certainly think Wellesley is a solid foe and who's playing St. John's on Thursday, and they're coached by I think some longtime lacrosse fans would remember the great Jimmy Connolly, who at the time was the state's leading scorer when he played at North Andover, 20 odd years ago. I think they'll give St. John's Prep, a better game than Barnstable did today. I do feel like the Marblehead game is the better of the two games as far as close competition. So, I think I'm disappointed I won't be able to get there. Hey, it's the way it is in the tournaments. We were talking today about pros and cons of the state tournament. I think you can put check marks in both categories there, but I used to really enjoy, I think, especially in hockey, when they would have double headers at certain rinks and all, but it applies to in lacrosse. You'd have different dates, different times for some of these games, and you could get to see a lot of different teams locally. Now it seems like we have a lot of games on the same day and at the same time, which makes it more difficult to see as many tournament games as we'd like. But hey, que sera, sera. Can't do much about it. You pick one and you move on.
I want to, we can jump back to the high school tournament in just a moment, but I just want to make sure before we wrap up this week's edition of the podcast that we give a shout out to Endicott baseball and what they were able to accomplish this year. Really, well, for them, a historic season, a fantastic season, a trip to Iowa into the D3 College World Series. Congrats to Coach Brian Haley and his team, his coaching staff, and so on. But also maybe a little shout out to Brian's dad, who was up in Maine, I guess, and was in the hospital and so on. I know he's concerned about his dad's health and so on. So we give his dad a little shout out as well, and hopefully he will get better. But Matt, I know you've been following them, the Gulls, pretty closely there in the postseason, and they just ran into it, out in Iowa in those two games.
Yeah, well said, Bill. Certainly we're all thinking of Brian's dad and, Brian and his associate head coach there, Harry Oringer, who's an Endicott grad himself. They run a first class program. All of his guys are, just tremendous leaders, good guys to be around. And, I guess it's easy for us to say that, like, well, from the outside, but, they were very welcoming of us, even though we can't be there every day to learn a little bit about their team and let us kind of inside, which was really cool on their run to Iowa to the World Series. And yeah, I mean, you get out there, it's some great teams that are left. Their pitching just wasn't sharp, and that's baseball. That happens sometimes. What are you gonna do? I mean, I think perhaps fatigue could have played a factor. I mean, they had played a lot of games there in the Super Regional and then the regular NCAA Regional and the conference tournament before that to get out there and just the runs they had I think it was an 8-run inning in one of those games, and they only had 5 games all season prior to that when they gave up 8 runs in a whole game. Never mind an inning. So just a tough go, but certainly 5 minutes after it's over, you realize what you've done, and you look back at the tremendous records that they've set. Offensively, defensively, they were the number one team in the country in earned run average during the regular season, which was a heck of an accomplishment, and continue to hit a lot of home runs. Their ballpark. I mean, some of the balls they hit out there at that minor league field in Cedar Rapids might have been home runs at Endicott with the right kind of wind, right? So, I mean, that's part of baseball. Each park is a little bit different dimensions. It's not the same as basketball or football where every field is the same size. Every field plays a little bit differently, right? Endicott's used to playing defense on turf, and on a grass field maybe the ball plays a little bit differently, and we've seen that can be a disadvantage for some New England teams in that tournament. But again, really the minutia of the baseball is secondary to the amazing accomplishment that they had. And we should speak to the entire school year at Endicott. I think I counted it was 7 NCAA tournament
Yeah,
appearances
that's right.
from different teams at Endicott, and most of them went deep. They hosted what, 4 or something like that. They hosted 2 rounds in the men's hockey tournament, including the Final Four. They hosted a
Football.
super regional in baseball. They hosted a football game in the NCAA. So I mean, these are teams that are like nationally ranked and doing damage, right? And hosting, not just teams that are winning their league and like squeaking in on an auto bid. And I really do feel, having been around Endicott a little bit closely now for probably going on 5, maybe 10 years, that, that's no coincidence that there's multiple programs having success. There is a connective tissue that runs through the cultures of all of those teams of success. And it starts with Brian Wiley, the athletic director, and you can just tell, it's amazing to me the way that he empowers his coaches to
Yeah.
set their own culture. But at the same time, all those cultures are so similar. Of course, they're tweaked because your sports are different and require different things. But there's also that one thread of togetherness and just work and just belief that goes through the whole athletic program. It's really impressive considering how different some of those sports can be. I mean, it's really, some of your big schools, they have one sport that they're really good at and the rest kind of go by the wayside. But at Endicott, I feel like, I mean, maybe it's a situation where a rising tide raises all boats. I don't know, but it really has been amazing to watch. Like, that place is not just a one program or even a one gender pony. I mean, it's men's teams, women's teams, fall teams, winter teams, spring teams. I mean, what they do over there is just really impressive.
It does seem like if you were a D3 athlete playing basketball, playing football or baseball, those are the two coaches I've done more with than the others, so to speak. That you'd have a good time playing those. You'd work hard, but you'd be enjoying yourself playing games at the D3 level with those teams at that school in that environment. It seems like they do have a nice thing going over there for
Oh,
sure.
it's incredible. They're incredible. It's
Yeah.
really infectious. I love talking to the coaches over there across all the different sports, hockey, I mean, basketball, you name it. They're just like, they're sponges. And I love the way that, again, like we have so much work to do in the high school level. We just can't be there every single day, right? We can't be there as much as we'd like to, but when we do come around and when we do call on the phone, they trust us. They open up right up, and they love
Yeah.
talking about their team. Like, they're not like defensive or Belichickian at all. I mean, I feel like every time I talk to somebody that works at Endicott, I learn something. And I'm sure you guys can speak to it too. Bill and Phil, the interviews you do with those men and women over there, but it's really become like a pet project of mine. Like, I just love talking to those people.
Well, and give a ton of credit to Sean Medeiros too, the sports information director. I mean, he has everything we need at his fingertips. He goes above and beyond helping us whenever we need it, and even when we don't, he's right there with any little tidbit or information that we need, making things accessible for us. And he's an outstanding representative of the school and the athletic department there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe we touched last week on Billy O'Neill's retirement.
Right. We did. Yeah.
I've heard from a lot of people asking me, hey, do you know when they're doing something for Billy? Do you know when something's going to be done for Billy? Because they want to be there to offer their congratulations to him at like a retirement type party. It's the kind of success and impact that he's had, and I've had a chance to talk to him since that story came out, and he's so thankful for the opportunity he got from the school at Salem State, and all the kids that he's coached and the players who have gone on to do so many great things and all. But I did want to mention Billy too, that hopefully we get some news soon about an event that'll be hosted for him at the college or someplace nearby where people can, congratulate him on a wonderful 42-year career at the school.
Yeah. It's funny. He remembered. I talked to him this last week too. And when I was at the radio station, I was really big into college hockey at the time. And,
yeah, I remember that.
Had done a lot with college hockey. And he remembered that I came over and talked to him his very first week on the job. And now I had forgotten that, to be honest with you. I know I've talked to him so many times over the years here and there, but it's one of those things that, I just don't particularly remember that. There's a lot I've forgotten, by the way, you know what I mean? So, but it's something that it's funny that he remembered that. And, but and Willie's right. I mean, it's too bad that we can't do more with the colleges, on a day-to-day basis, because I think it's such a great take. Like if you're a high schooler, middle school student, you're a parent with younger kids like that in the middle school, take them to the Salem State or the Endicott games, basketball, hockey, or whatever. It's a fantastic take to see that level of play. So
totally agree. Yeah. It's a great take. And believe me, we wish we could get there more. When I first started in this business 33 years ago, Salem State was obviously the big school, and we did a ton of Salem State stuff, but we also had, more than double the sports staff we have now, and many more pages of sports in the newspaper. So things have changed, and I feel badly about that a lot of times, but we still want to present great stories when they're out there, and with Endicott lately, anyway, we've been able to.
Guys, we have a couple minutes left, but I know, Phil, we talked about some of the lacrosse games coming up. We've touched on some of the teams. People can go to those brackets and different things, the MIA brackets, and you guys list the games in the paper and stuff. But any game or note that you guys are looking at this week? Sometimes we end that way, which is kind of neat. What are you looking at this week? Phil, you mentioned the two lacrosse games. Let me hold you for a second. So let's go to Nick and Matt to see what they're thinking of. What's ahead this week?
I'm looking forward to seeing the ME girls tomorrow. 5-12 matchup over at Highland Field at 6:30. They're always worth the take. I did not see them. Was it Monday night? They buried Stoneham. I saw the boys that night, so I'm excited to get a girls game in.
You got it. Matt.
I think a couple of things jump out baseball wise. I know St. John's Prep has got BC High, and that's a rivalry game. They lost to them twice during the regular season. BC ripped their faces off at Freddie's Diamond 16-2, and then the Prep played a much closer game, but ultimately lost 4-3. I believe they had the lead in that one late and yacked it up. So the Prep has a history of losing to BC in the regular season and getting their money back in the playoffs. So I'll be very interested to see how that goes. I think Masconomet's another one that I have my eyes on. They've had a great win Monday to open things up, and I wanted to give a shout out to Logan Kuhn, who was a valedictorian of the class of 2023 over there at Masco, and he hit 417 and stole 30 bases during the regular season. So that's pretty impressive there by Kuhn. And I'd be remiss not to mention the track. For whatever reason, the MIAA did not score the team scores for track over the weekend until today. And as it turns out, both St. John's Prep and the Peabody girls finished second, runners up in the All-State Meet of Champions team standings. So tremendous job by Coach Zach Lankow and Coach Fernando Braz at Peabody. Some state champions on both sides. Lindsey Wilson in the high jump, the individual state champion for Peabody. And for St. John's, Nathan Lopez, who we've talked about a lot on the pod here, takes 3 gold medals, which Coach Lankow thinks has never been done before. Doubles up, wins the mile and the 2 mile, and ran a leg of the 4x800 relay. So if you're a distance man, I mean, that's about the best thing you can possibly do to end your in-state high school career. Both of those teams have plenty of people going on to nationals. Speaking of valedictorians, we should shout out Jess Richards too, the Division II state champion, I believe it was in the discus, who didn't even compete at the Meet of Champions because she was the class valedictorian and had to give a speech for Peabody. So two valedictorians with two pretty impressive athletic feats this week too.
Bill, anything else you want to weigh in on?
Yeah, I think we should be paying attention to some tennis that's going on coming up. Still got quite a few teams that are out on the court doing their thing. You get Marblehead boys will be on the road tomorrow in Belmont in a Division II second round game. Ipswich is also hitting the road, another road trip out to the nether regions of the state. They're going to take on Sutton High School. I don't think that's quite as far as the lacrosse team had to go, but they're playing a Division IV second round game. Swampscott girls are Dover Sherborne tomorrow, I know. On Thursday, we have some local action. Ipswich boys are home against Monomoy. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of girls lacrosse. St. John's Prep boys are home in a Division I quarterfinal against Newton North. I know Mark Metropolis has those guys playing really well. They're the number 2 seed. And Ipswich girls, are going out to Williams College. They are going on a far trip to take on Mount Greylock on Thursday. And I believe Masconomet, which is unbeaten, the Masconomet girls play Friday in the quarterfinals against Minnechaug. So still got quite a few teams alive, including the Hamilton Wenham girls in Division IV, which are the defending state champs.
All right, guys. Little behind the scenes thing. I am having all kinds of trouble tonight with my cursor here. I'm going to try to shut this down, but if I can't, I feel like it's a car without brakes here. But we're about at the end of our time here, so I do feel I feel that we're going to get cut off here, but that'll be a good thing here because we have just seconds left here. I'm not quite sure how much time. So, folks,
all right,
there he is, Phil Stacey, Nick Kukaru, Matt Williams. I'm Bill Newell. Thanks very much for joining us. Hopefully, we get our my little